We've got a wonderful interview for you guys today. Dr. Jane Sanders joins us here at YouTube Space New York. We appreciate this space, and we appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
Good to be here.
All right, excellent. So now, a lot of people know that you are Bernie Sanders' wife, but they might not know that you're also a policy advisor. Mm-hmm. So that opens up a lot of questions. We'll talk policy. We'll talk about your life a little bit. So we'll do it all. Okay. First, what if he wins New York?
That's good. We're looking forward to it. It depends on turnout. Everywhere, when there's a large voter turnout, Bernie does better, and he seems to close the gap, really keeping us all on edge until the very end. But he often overtakes Secretary Clinton at the end.
And so, if he does win in New York, are you guys the favorite then? Because that's a second largest state, obviously, a lot of delegates. You'd still be behind in the pledged delegate race, presumably, but then you would have enormous momentum going into the April 26 elections, which are a lot of states. I've seen him close a big lead in Pennsylvania. Last poll I saw, he's only down by 6. Yeah. So how would the campaign feel about winning New York? Is that a watershed moment if it happens?
It could be a turning point from the standpoint of the media, for instance. I mean, up until this point, it doesn't matter that he won 8 out of the last 9 contests. They keep on saying, but he can't win. They would have to take another look at that because Secretary Clinton represented the state of New York, and if Bernie won, that I think finally would start to give them pause and say, well, maybe we ought to take this guy seriously. Voters across America are taking him seriously, and he's winning quite a bit. So, but even if he does really well here in New York, that will portend well for the future.
So, how frustrated are you guys when they keep calling the states you won irrelevant? Because they're either white or weird. I mean, you'd be surprised the number of times they use the word weird. That's a weird state. It doesn't count. Yeah. Right? When conservatives win those states, they're not weird. Mm-hmm. Okay? But if Bernie Sanders wins Kansas, all of a sudden it's super weird. Yeah. Or it's Western, or it's next to Vermont. It seems like they've come up with every excuse in the book for it not to count.
Absolutely. And they don't seem to, it depends on what they're thinking. They say Hawaii is white. Well, that's going to be a real surprise to Hawaii. It's one of the most diverse states in the nation.
It's actually the most diverse state in the nation. Yes. Yeah. So, but they are a little weird, to be fair.
We loved it. I went there and campaigned. So, they don't seem to be worried about the truth. The narrative is written. If he wins, we say this. It doesn't matter whether it has any basis in fact. So that is frustrating for people who care about facts to see it constantly being misrepresented. And also, I don't know what's wrong with the white vote anymore. I mean, it's like, but it's white. Oh, okay. We don't want that, as well as the Latino, as well as the black and brown and Asian.
So last I checked, the country was majority white.
That's changing.
Okay. So, I mean, so winning the white vote is probably helpful in a general election. So you want to win all the votes, as you just said, right? But, and I remember Hillary Clinton saying back in 2008, Barack Obama can't win the white vote. That's why you shouldn't give him, the general election. He shouldn't be the general election candidate, right? So, isn't that interesting? Do you guys ever strategize, since you are a policy advisor, about, hey, should we take our old quotes from 2008 and Bill Clinton's quotes when he was in West Virginia talking about how middle-class white workers like you guys should decide the election, and now they're saying, no, middle-class white workers should not decide the election.
Right. I guess what we tend to not see people through the prism of race. They're people. We want to address the issues of all the different people and all the different ethnic backgrounds. We've gone out to Native American tribes and talked about their issues, learned a lot. But I think it's hard because you look at all these things, and as soon as you start to talk about what she said or what he said in the past, they yell negative campaigning, which it's not, because it's always based in the fact. I mean, the gun vote, she's making the gun vote a huge issue here in New York. She ignored it in some of the states that have, the rural states. She didn't mention guns. Now she's mentioning them. But in 2008, she was so pro-gun that Barack Obama called her Annie Oakley. And then when she ran for the Senate, she was anti-gun, very pro-gun control. And now since she's running against Bernie, that's the state. So it's gone flip-flop, flip-flop.
So how do you guys maintain that balance? Because if I was running a campaign of any sort, I wouldn't give a damn what the media said. I'd run roughshod over them, and they wouldn't like me at all. But they don't like you guys anyway, even though you're careful, right? And I would say, look, here's Hillary Clinton's positions. No ands, ifs, or buts about it. But if you guys do that, sometimes they yell at you, right? And
well, it's not so much, Jen, that they yell at us. They basically don't cover it. And the Clinton campaign yells at us, and then they're on every talk show over and over and over again, misrepresenting and distorting what Bernie said. So it's frustrating from that perspective. We talk about what the history is. It's important for people to know where people stood all these years, not where they came in the last 3 or 4 months. And we've seen Secretary Clinton move closer and closer and closer to Bernie, to the point where she and her campaign were saying, there's really no difference. We're on the same page. Well, we're not on the same page. If you elect Bernie Sanders versus Hillary Clinton, you will get very diverging views of where this country needs to go. And you'll have totally different cabinets. We'll actually have environmentalists heading the EPA. We'll have people who are concerned about food security and want affordable prescription drugs heading the FDA. We'll have a surgeon general that cares about alternative health care as opposed to prescription drugs over-prescribing. There will be not the revolving door that has been there for many, many years of lobbyists, industry, executive, legislative branch, and they just keep on coming through. Fossil fuel industry won't be represented in Bernie's cabinet.
Well, okay, so the cabinet is not talked about nearly enough in this election cycle. That's true. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I first heard that Bernie Sanders might put Joseph Stiglitz on the cabinet, for example. I had heard that a long time ago. I don't know if that's still who you guys are considering. But I thought, oh, wow, that's right. All these voices, like he's a double Nobel winner and basically got shut out, honestly, even from the Obama administration. And if you change the paradigm and you have all these different people in positions of real power, that's a fascinating thing because we haven't had progressives in power in this country in a long, long time. So who are you guys considering for the cabinet?
Well, I'm not about to make any announcements here, but people
go ahead.
People like, Bill McKibben would be great in the EPA. People like Robert Reich, people like Elizabeth Warren, all these people that actually have a stand and they talk about the issues that they care about. I met a Native American doctor up in Alaska who's transformed Indian health services. We'd love to have her. That people like them. We haven't talked to them. We haven't said, well, will you join the cabinet? So please don't make any announcements.
No, I hear you. But look, you just said something there that's very, very important. Because honestly, I think this is part of the reason why the establishment doesn't like you guys. And so here's what I mean by that. Bill McKibben is a guy who actually cares about the environment deeply, who's worked his whole life for it.
Yeah.
If you put him as the head of the EPA, the establishment would lose their mind. They'd be like, no, that guy actually cares about the environment. You can't put him as the head of the Environmental Protection Agency. You're supposed to put someone kind of in the middle who's worked into the industry before, et cetera.
Exactly.
And so do you have a sense of that? Do you, like when you say something along those lines, maybe McKibben and EPA, or it could have been 100 other things, do you get establishment people going, whoa, wait, that's not acceptable?
They're not as open about it as that, but I know you're right. I mean, the fact is that we haven't had people who were, if you look at Bernie's speeches and you say, who would carry out those ideas? Those are the kind of people that he would appoint. The establishment doesn't like the ideas that he's talking about, and that's why they're working really hard not to support him, not to allow him to come in. The superdelegates are pretty much an insurance policy for the establishment. You get 30% of the votes you need to win the nomination are superdelegates. Their vote, say you're a superdelegate and I vote, I have one vote, yours count for thousands of votes. And it's just, you can make the decision.
Yeah, and they haven't voted yet. That's what drives me
Right.
crazy. When they put the superdelegates up on the board, that is a form of a lie that the media has taken because they have not voted.
Right.
They could say, hey, I'm for Hillary Clinton, but that's exactly what they said in 2008, and then a lot of them switched over and voted for Obama. So counting them as voting when they haven't voted is just not doing your job. That's factually incorrect. You know, look, there's a lot we've said here I've got to get back to, but now that we're on that for a second, how much do you think it makes sense to call out the media on that, right? To say, hey, you guys, this is factually incorrect and completely unacceptable. And if you said that, do they care? Like if Trump says it, they panic. They go, oh my God, Trump said we were unacceptable. And I guess part of that is he says, I'm going to block access to you guys, right? And he does these threats, et cetera. So what's your take on how to handle the press in that regard?
I think the press is very much groupthink now. I mean, you can turn on any station and see the same exact conversation. The mainstream press, certainly not you guys. And it's really depressing because nobody's going out on their own and doing investigations or trying to actually find out facts and report them. They're reporting he said, she said, that's it. I mean, I turned on the TV this morning and they're talking about, well, Trump says the establishment doesn't want him to win. And they are reporting that as though that is an open question, that he's making an accusation. Give me a break. You know, they don't want him to win. They've been very clear about that. I don't want him to win either. But it's just the fact that the media can't get beyond he said something and we have to react to a particular thing instead of saying, what are we going to do about poverty in America? What are we going to do to make higher ed more affordable? Whose plan is better? I mean, no discussion about those issues. So
you mentioned earlier that they have not covered you guys nearly as much, and that's a fact. In 2015, I believe that the Sanders campaign got 6% of the coverage of Donald Trump, and I might be overestimating that.
Yeah, 10 seconds no, 10 minutes in all of 2015 on ABC News.
Yeah. It might have been 10 seconds. I have to check, but I'm serious, right?
I'm not good at math.
Right, no, and it's amazing. So obviously you guys feel that they have not been fair to you in that sense. Is that fair to describe it that way?
Yeah, but it wasn't a surprise. It wasn't a surprise, so we're not complaining and saying, oh, that's unfair. It's just made the job more difficult. On the other hand, the fact that we have a very strong online presence, that people are engaged and talking about these issues, watching shows like yours and reading some of the alternative media has been phenomenal for us. So that's where you can see the real difference in where he gets his support. He has his support. First it was young, then it was 30 and under, then it was 40 and under. So now we're winning the 45 and under group. But we're pretty much even with the 50 and under.
Do you think that you're doing better with the younger viewers because they're watching more online?
That's where they get their news. That's where they actually are engaged. I mean, it's exciting. One of the things Bernie wants to do is invigorate our democracy, get people talking about the issues, and they're doing it. And that, I think, is what's making the difference, and that's where his support is coming from. No matter what happens with Bernie, he got his transport trade union endorsement this morning and Senator Merkley's endorsement this morning, and they reported both with the second sentence being, but he can't really win, but it's not really going to make a difference. That's how it's been every single time he's won. But it really doesn't matter. She's the presumed nominee.
My favorite headline, I think, was from Mashable before the Wisconsin vote. Bernie likely to win Wisconsin, but it won't matter. Like, even before the election. Exactly. Trust me, if he wins, it will not matter. Yeah. Yet I never saw any headlines about Hillary Clinton wins the South, but it doesn't matter.
Right.
It doesn't matter because she was more likely to win those states. Yeah, that's true. She was more likely to win those states.
If something doesn't matter in the general, it's the southern red states in terms of being able to actually carry those states in the future. The states that Bernie has won are the ones that actually we have a chance, the Democrats have a chance to really win. I think the Republicans far outnumber the Democrats in the states where Hillary won in the South.
So one more thing about the press there, because look, to be fair, Hillary Clinton has also won some very important states in the general election, including Ohio and Florida.
Yep.
Right now you guys have won Colorado, New Hampshire, and those are swing states, those are purple states. So both sides have won some important purple states. But in the reporting of that, we don't get that sense of balance, right? And again, I've got to ask the question, and I asked it to Bernie Sanders, and I want to ask it to you. Why? Why do you think that they're predisposed to make her victories sound bigger, grander, more definitive, count the superdelegates before they've voted? I mean, because if you're in politics and that's your job as a reporter, it's super embarrassing if you don't know that superdelegates can switch their vote, and did switch their vote in 2008 with this exact same candidate, with Hillary Clinton. They switched away from her at the end. So I suspect they know it. And since they don't report it that way, what's your best guess as to their motivation to be biased on that side rather than your side? I mean, we hear that it's a liberal media all the time. You're telling me it's not a liberal media?
It's not a progressive media, that's for sure. I think that I mean, the Clinton campaign spins. They have, dozens of people every day spinning the news, and they have relationships that go back many, many years. Might be one factor. The other is just that Bernie's not the kind of person they expected to be serious, to be a serious contender. You remember Hillary Clinton, it was a coronation. Nobody was going to enter the race. Everybody thought it was done before it was even run. So Bernie came out and they thought, oh, that's nice. But they really didn't take him seriously. I'm kind of surprised at that, because when your opening has 7,000 people out to come, we were surprised. We thought the media would be surprised and say, wow, that's strong support. But it was, but it's his home state. And then he wins more votes than any candidate in the history of New Hampshire in either the Democratic or the Republican parties. And it's a conservative state. But they just say, well, they know him well. Well, 86% in the state of Vermont, yeah, that's his home state. But the thing is, if they know him well, the people who know him the best are giving him that vote of confidence, even if they're not, progressive-minded people. That should be something that would give them pause. It's just he doesn't fit into the status quo of politics today.
Look, my sense of it is that it goes deeper, because
You're probably right.
There was one person who thought Bernie Sanders could beat Hillary Clinton, and that was me.
Yes.
So 3 years ago, I did a video, and I had honestly forgotten about it until one of our viewers reminded me. They're like, look, we found this video of you saying Bernie Sanders can beat Hillary Clinton. Now, the reason I bring that up is not to brag, although I don't mind doing that. It's because what I laid out in that video was, look, you're telling me Hillary Clinton can't be beat when she was beat in 2008, right? Yeah. By a more liberal candidate. So why is this not doable? It's maddening, and I think that, and in some way they were more open to Barack Obama than they were to Bernie Sanders. And so part of it is Barack Obama at least had some blessings of the establishment. He had given a keynote speech in 2004.
Really good speech.
Yeah, which was a great speech. One of the best speeches I've ever heard.
Absolutely.
Bernie Sanders does not have the stamp of approval from the establishment, right? And so I guess my point would be, I guess you shouldn't be surprised that the establishment doesn't like him, because he's not the establishment, and he says, I'm going to take your establishment apple cart and I'm going to overturn it.
Exactly, and that makes sense. I mean, we don't seek establishment support, we seek the support of the voters. The point is that he wants to transform this nation. He wants to have it work, have a government of, by, and for the people, something that works to improve the quality of life of us, of the regular folks, not the profits of the corporations, not the people that all go to the same cocktail parties, whether they're in the media or in politics. I mean, he's not the establishment candidate. So that's why we're not complaining. It's just too bad for a democracy.
Yeah, I can't resist one more. I want to ask about the Daily News too and their hatchet job, but okay, I got other parts that I want to talk about, but Krugman.
Surprise.
Look, there's no way you cannot be disappointed, because there's so many things that in his article attacking Bernie Sanders that are simply not factual, and almost everyone has now pointed out. Saying the big banks didn't cause the crash is maniacal, okay?
Yeah.
So why do you think he's doing it? I mean, I look at it and I think there's a lot of pundits on TV and maybe some writers who wouldn't mind a job in the Clinton administration. What's your sense of it?
I'm not going to go there. I mean, I was surprised and disappointed. His analysis used to be somewhat correct, and it seems in the last 6 months it's been. I don't read him anymore. There's just nothing there to get except to get annoyed to say that's not accurate. So it's too bad.
All right. So now let's go to policies. And for those of you who don't know, I say Jane, but as I said in the beginning, Dr. Jane Sanders.
Jane, yeah.
Has a doctorate in leadership studies and politics and education, and was the president of Goddard College and Burlington College for a while. So you have this deep background in it. You were, for a while, chief of staff for your husband when he was in the House.
Unpaid, yeah.
Okay. And you worked as, again, unpaid press secretary at different times in his career. So who's more liberal, you or Bernie Sanders?
I don't think either of us would describe ourselves as liberal. I mean, progressive is more. I always think of liberal as being more willing to really fight for the poor, but not really take on the upper class. At least that's been the liberal Democrats in the last 3 decades. It seems that there's a way that we want to protect the poor, but we don't really want to upset the apple cart, as you say. So progressive, which means...
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because
my own analysis, it probably doesn't hold any water. But
No, it's important for us to get a sense of what you mean by liberal and progressive. I would have thought liberal was to the left of progressive, but you're saying no, liberal of the last 3 decades haven't taken on the rich. That's why you guys aren't calling yourselves
liberals. Or the corporations. Liberals. They've actually, taken money. I think it's diluted their effectiveness. That's one of the things that has concerned me about the direction of the Democratic Party over the last few decades, that it's become more centrist and become more open to corporate interests and more dependent on their money. Now, individuals, there are a lot of progressive Democrats elected throughout every part of the country. But that's something that worries me. And I think that if you were FDR, you'd be saying this is going in the absolute wrong direction.
All right, before I get back to the issue of what does it mean to be a progressive, Barney Frank is out there, and we interviewed him on the Young Turks, our reporter Jordan Chariton did. And he says, look, what do you want? Republicans to get 100% of the bank money? So they right now, we get 20%, they get 80%, and at least we're getting 20%. What do you think of that way of thinking?
I think that we need to change campaign finance system. We have it is really destroying our democracy. We're saying everybody, when you go down there in Congress and you go through orientation, they say you have to go at least an hour a day, probably a couple of hours a day, and dial for dollars. Call rich people, call rich corporations, and asking them for money. Bernie has never done that, but that is something that people are actually really told as soon as they get into Congress, that they are dependent on that. Now, when you are always on the phone with the top echelon, you're hearing their viewpoint. You're not hearing the viewpoint of the people out in the on the streets or in the parks or in affordable housing. I mean, we need to change it. So I completely disagree with a lot of what Barney Frank says. I think that he is absolutely wrong on that matter. And we need to break our dependence on, or the Democrats' dependence on Wall Street, fossil fuel industry, and pharmaceuticals, because they're stopping any sensible regulation down there.
By his own logic, you guys would be at a permanent 4-to-1 disadvantage
Yes.
if you accepted that way of thinking. So what does it mean to be a progressive in your mind?
Well, I think it means that you stand up. You don't just stand up for the young, the people who are most vulnerable, the seniors, the veterans sleeping out on the street, the children in poverty, 1 in 5 in America, which is completely unacceptable. But you're saying that is completely unacceptable, and what we need to do is really address it, not just come up with nice little programs that help those people, but to change the structure of our government, the priorities of our government, to say we care about people, people are at the center, and everybody should have the opportunity to have a foundation that provides them dignity and security throughout their life. And that means we have to come up with policies that stop gentrification and increase affordable housing, like Bernie's land trust that he started as the first municipal land trust in the city of Burlington, keeping perpetually affordable housing for people. Then he started it. He did it here in Congress. He did the National Land Trust. Now in Europe, they're coming to Burlington to learn about this, and they're starting them because everybody says, I need to have a decent shelter without spending half my money. So, but in order to do those things, you're actually stopping unfettered capitalism. You're allowing people to get very rich, but not at the expense of the people that maybe started life at a lesser place than you or I.
So instead of, you mentioned, hey, we don't want to do little policy proposals, we want to do restructuring. So give me one more idea about what that restructuring would entail. How would we restructure?
Well, we would make sure that when we have trade deals, instead of going up with trade deals like NAFTA, CAFTA, permanent normal trade relations with China, that have closed thousands and thousands of factories in this country and cost millions of jobs, we would be saying, let's have trade deals that actually create jobs in America. And yes, bring back some of the tariffs in order to, if corporations go overseas, they're going to pay a little bit more to bring their product back. We want them to invest in America. So it's basically saying, we're all in this together. We need to work together. And there are people with great means that actually agree with us and say things have gotten really too far out of kilter. It's back to when FDR was saying, we need to change things, and he came up with this New Deal, and everybody said it was socialism, they said, but it saved our country. And he said, I welcome their hatred because I am standing with you, the vast majority of people. And he made corporations pay a little bit more in taxes. All that switched back since the 80s. Everything has gone down, down, down. And there's been a massive transfer of wealth from the middle class, the disappearing middle class, to the top 1%. We need to reverse that trend.
So is there any policy positions that you and Senator Sanders disagree on?
I don't know. I hadn't thought of that, and I probably wouldn't tell you. No, I really haven't thought of it. I'm sure we do disagree. We argue about issues when they're coming up, but we usually come to the same
So
place.
when you have those arguments, who's the more progressive person in the room?
He's always more pro-labor, always. I mean, I am too, but I am thinking about all the other things. If it's a union question, he's a union man. So he
ironic, because a lot of the unions didn't support him. They went with Hillary Clinton.
Yeah. We discussed all that before he ran. We talked about the fact that, I said, Bern, are you going to be able to handle this? That the establishment is firmly behind Hillary Clinton. And it was clear when we got in. And your friends are going to toe the line because that's what's expected. And he said, yeah, I can handle it. But it's been great when the CWA and the nurses come out, and now the transport union. I mean, there are a number of unions that have bucked the trend. And what you find is the ones that are supporting him nationally are polling their members, which is really exciting to us. Have
you ever lost a vote when they polled the members?
I don't think we have.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder why the others didn't poll their members. Maybe they polled the people they were getting donations from. Interesting. Anyway, how about other issues? Any that you're to the left of him on?
I don't know. He's a real strong feminist, so no, we're really in line with pay equity and family medical leave and all that. No, I think we're pretty much in sync. But what the difference is, there's kind of a yin and a yang. He comes at it from a policy perspective. He looks at it and he thinks about it, and he hears things and he says, okay, we need to take these steps to accomplish this goal. I have talked to several people, and I am focused on those people. I'm constantly saying, well, but how's it going to affect this person? And he'll kid me at first. Well, wait, we can't worry about Joe over there that you happen to meet on the street on the rope line. You have to be thinking broader. So he focuses on policy, I focus on people, and I think it's a really good it's a good marriage of ideas as well as a good marriage.
So let's say you're having breakfast or dinner. Are you guys talking about the movies? Are you talking about policy? What are you guys talking about?
Well, during this election, we're talking about policy, scheduling, strategy, and as often as we can, the kids and the grandkids. That's nice.
Oh, how about your first date? Do you remember your first date?
Yeah, well, his victory party was when I actually met him. I had arranged a mayoral debate, and he spoke, and I thought, oh my gosh, this guy embodies everything I ever believed in. So I wanted to work for him. So he called together a group of people to work on youth issues. How do we make Burlington the best place to raise a family? And I was one of those people. I represented one of the agencies. And so then we went to the next time I saw him was after his massive 10-vote victory. We had a victory party, and I was invited, and he asked me to dance. And it was pretty obvious right then, yeah, we're gonna hang out here a little bit.
Do you remember what you guys danced to? Was this square dancing? What was it?
No, it was a slow dance, but I don't remember what it was. That's crazy. Yeah.
And where did he take you on the first date?
Well, then he called together all those people about the youth issues, and after one of our first meetings, I was outside the library. There were 190 people participating, saying, what are we going to do for
I hope
kids?
there wasn't 190 people at your first
Not
date.
at our first date.
Okay.
But he came out and he said, he walked right by, because I was with a bunch of people, and he stopped, and then turned around and he said, have you eaten? And I said, no, of course I had. But we went out to a Mexican restaurant, and we just talked and talked. It was great.
No, yeah, okay, great.
Pretty boring stuff, but
Okay. I won't go further than that.
we'll leave it there.
So, do you every once in a while, when he's being attacked in this campaign, do you ever want to jump out there and defend him? Do you ever hear Hillary Clinton saying something and want to get out there and debate her?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to go debate her, but I yell at the TV sometimes when he's not there. Otherwise, but yeah, it's frustrating. It's frustrating when. I think an election should be about a clear choice. There couldn't be a clearer choice between two candidates. And when people try to muddy that and try to distort and misrepresent records and where people really stand on issues, that really bothers me. So
Is there anything that that either Hillary Clinton or her campaign has done that angered you the most?
I think everything that she's done around the gun issue bothers me because Bernie has common sense gun values. I mean, he's voted, for all the things that are even under consideration there. He lost his first election because he said, I want to stop the manufacture and sale of assault weapons. And he lost that election by 3 points. In 1990, he had the same position, but people understood that he was really, even if they disagreed with him, that he was trustworthy. He won that by 17%. She's trying to make him look like he's in the NRA gun lobby when he's got a D-, that he doesn't care about the Sandy Hook parents. That really bothers me. It's like, oh, come on, we just don't go there. We don't go and ask people for support in the worst time of their lives. And so that bothers me because it borders on, it's such a distortion, and she knows it. That's what bothers me. If really she didn't know, that'd be okay. But the fact is, her gun record is a lot more spotty than his.
All right, last two things. When you guys are together, or maybe in a private moment, do you whisper of a dream that it could really happen? And if you do, and you dream that dream, if you're first lady, what do you do? What's your top priorities?
I think my top priority would be that I would resonate the voices that aren't being heard. Go out into the communities and hear the voices that aren't being heard and make sure we bring them back to the center of the conversation. I am focused on families and children, always have been. Everybody's somebody's son or daughter, so it doesn't really exclude anybody. But we really, I think I'm more, as I said, more focused on people. and we'll be dealing with a lot of issues. That includes, dealing with childcare and K through 12 educational equity. I mean, we see that there's real problems with that. It includes the fact that 1 out of 4 kids in the South Bronx have asthma because of the decaying infrastructure and the terrible air. So, it'd be pretty broad, but I'd be a voice just like I was when he was mayor in Burlington. I was a voice for families, and they were always included in the discussion.
Okay, and finally, Hillary Clinton was senator from New York, but Bernie Sanders grew up in Brooklyn, and you grew up in Brooklyn.
I did.
And you grew up Catholic, and now you guys are going to go meet the Pope.
Yeah. Well, we don't know we're meeting the Pope. We're going to the Vatican.
Okay.
And we would love to, but nothing's scheduled as of this moment.
Oh, okay. All right. But is that exciting, given that you grew up Catholic here in Brooklyn, the idea that one day you'd be invited to the Vatican?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing to have him be invited to a conference of world leaders and academicians. And it's only a few world leaders that have been invited by the Vatican to talk about creating a moral economy. I think it's really just wonderful to hear. And to be invited by the Vatican, that is Pope Francis's Vatican. I mean, he and Bernie are kindred spirits in terms of how they approach the world and how they feel that fairness and equity and justice really need to be restored in governments all over this planet.
All right, Dr. Jane Sanders, thank you so much for joining us on the Young Turks. Really
Thank you,
appreciate
Jane.
it.